Hello everyone and welcome to another monster guide, and today I'm going to be talking about Belladeon, Belladeon. Not too sure how to pronounce his name properly, but he's most commonly known as Bella, right? So I'm just going to call him Bella. Anyway, so Bella is a very strong monster that will last you throughout the entire life of the game. Like even now when I'm in late game PvP and all that, I still use Bella a fair bit, especially in Guild Wars. I think he's a very strong monster. His kit provides a lot of the most important and best moves, and for like an early game player, he's very easy to obtain, or sort of easy to obtain, because he's farmable from secret dungeons. So I guess the main difficulty you might have is trying to find someone who has the secret dungeon. But my tip to try to get one, just try to stay in like one of the heavily populated public channels. So probably in like the early 100s, and you pretty much just wait in chat until someone finds the Inagami secret dungeon. It will pop up and say something like so and so has found one, and then just remember what the name is and just immediately try to add that person. I wouldn't bother trying to type in chat saying, oh, X X add me, I need yours Inagami dungeon or whatever. I don't find that very effective. Most people don't really read chat or anything, but if they do get a dungeon, they probably will check their community requests and stuff, and if their list is not full, they might be kind enough to add you. Eventually you should be able to find someone who's willing to add you, and it's just all about persistency. Just gonna keep at it, and it's worth it in the end. Hopefully you can farm it within that 1 hour that you have, and then you don't have to worry about it ever again. Okay, then now before I go into the stats, let's just talk about the skills first and why it's a very good monster. So on the first skill, Scratch, his default attack, he's got a defense break for 2 turns. So now the skill ups add damage, so he doesn't really benefit much from skill ups, but Inagamis are only 3 stars, so it's not difficult to max skill them, so you may as well. But you're not leveling this because of the damage, you're leveling it for the debuff. It's a 100% application rate, so if we ignore accuracy and resist checks, then this is a reliable defense break, and not many units have this on the first skill. The more common ones are probably, say, Darien or Jubel, like the Light and Dark Vagabonds. But otherwise, Bella is sort of my staple default armor breaker. Especially because for Bella, because you build him as a support, he'll be relatively fast. So he suits any fast nuker, and I'll discuss that a bit more as far as speeding is concerned a bit later. So that's the first skill. Now the second skill is a buff removal, and you want to skill it up for sure so that it's on a 3-turn cooldown. The damage is pretty negligible, but it's extra damage, you can't really complain. But he typically won't do a lot of damage anyway, it's more for the effect. And it's a single target buff removal, removes all beneficial effects assuming accuracy checks succeed. And this is really nice against anything that has like things like Fanatic, a buff from Chloe, Will runes, defense buff, invincibility buffs from all sorts of things, endure buff from Fuel Mars, etc. So this is two very strong abilities already in his skill kit, and it's very useful. Now the third ability is a heal, as you know. Now the recovery is not adding 10%, like it's not additive, right? It's not a 50% health bar heal. I believe it's multiplicative, but he heals a fair chunk of your health. I think you probably see it's about roughly 40% or so. Don't quote me on that, but because I don't really pay that close details to it, but it's a very large heal, and it's a group heal, so you're gaining a lot of health out of it. And obviously you want to max skill this for the cooldown reduction. It goes down to 4 turns, and it's a pretty strong heal. Now the other very important part and is not to be discounted is it also fills up your attack bar by 30%. Now this is really good because there will be times where everyone might be on full health, but if say the enemy field Mars has an attack bar of say he's like 90% filled on his attack bar, and your field Mars is lagging behind slightly, say he's at 80% health bar, right? You can see that his field Mars is going to move before you, that you might want to buff the health bar so that you move first and you pop their endure before they pop yours, for example, right? So definitely don't discount that part of the ability, but most of the time you will be using it for the heal. But it's a very nice addition to have on the skill. So overall, Bella does a lot of things. You know, attack bar boost, heal, buff removal, and defense break. Right? They're all very strong PvE and PvP abilities. So that's usually why he's recommended as probably the second 6-star, like ever. So usually you make your fodder farmer first, and then after that you make a healer, and Bella is the most common one. So if you don't have something like a Chisun or an Aerial early on, then the free-to-play option is Bella. Okay. Now the stats and how to rune. Bella is very flexible, and it really depends on what the main purpose you want him to fulfill. Now, for early game, you'll probably need to use Swift, and Swift is fine. Even late game, if you're mostly just using him for PvE purposes, like dragons, then Swift is still fine on him, because you're just mostly using him to heal. Eventually, for late game, it is better to make him violent, especially if you're using him a lot more in PvP. And even in PvE, he benefits a lot from violent, because extra cooldown reductions just means he can heal more often. Now, for the stat priorities, okay. Now the first stat priority is speed. Doesn't matter whether you're early game or late game. It's usually going to be speed is the main thing you're looking for. Secondarily, you want to look for HP. Right. So usually for the 246, you run speed, HP, so that he's decently tanky. Right. He's going to be a support monster. So he needs to be able to survive, fairly well. After that, I rate accuracy as the third most important, because his defense break has an accuracy check, and his buff removal also has an accuracy check. So accuracy is fairly important, especially if you're using him a lot in PvP. So I think as much as you can, up to maybe around 80% is pretty good, but you don't have to go for that high. I think around 50% plus will get you by most of the time. Now let's talk a bit more in depth on runes. Now my one is Rune Violent Will, more so for PvP than anything else. Okay. Now I'll put the runes up for a few seconds so you can see like what stats I'm aiming for. But as I said, it really just depends on where you're using your Bella. Now, and for the offset, it doesn't have to be will. He can be used with just about any offset. He benefits a lot from revenge, because his revenge will proc his first skill, and as you know, his first skill is the defense break. So it adds a lot of utility for revenge if he's on that. But alternatively, you can also use pretty much any offset you want. Nemesis is nice for more attack bar, especially if you're going to put him in raids. He'll benefit from either Nemesis or Revenge for that. But if you're lacking in stats, you can also use any of the stat boosting offsets like Energy, Guard, Focus, Endure. They're all fine. Even Shield is not the worst, because Shield helps against certain comps like Orion. Ideally, you want Will and Shield if possible, but if you're running like if you're running with, say, a Chloe in the team, so maybe Theo, Bella, Chloe or something, then Bella can be the shield holder, and then hopefully your Chloe is fast enough to have turn one, and then everyone on your team will have shield, immunity, and immutability, right? So that's a very good counter towards Orion teams and stuff like that. Well, mainly Orion teams. Okay, so that's the runes. Now, as far as the space sinking is concerned, I was discussing before. Now, you'll commonly pair him with some nuker. For me, I use Fielmars. All right, I think Fielmars is a good recommended unit. He's easy or sort of easy to obtain. I mean, eventually you should be able to get one, hopefully, barring RNG luck. I know there are some people who get things like 5 Emirs in a row or 5 Tisarans in a row, but hopefully eventually as you keep playing you'll just keep going for the Ifrits until you get one. Now, the reason that Fuel Mars is a really good unit to pair with Bella is because Fuel Mars is going to be built as a speed attacker. Well, at least I recommend him to be a speed attacker. So you're going to need to make him very fast, and then you need a defense breaker that will keep up with Fuel Mars, right? So things like Darian and Jubel, or at least not Darian. Jubel, maybe you can keep up with Fuel Mars if you stack a lot of speed substats on him. But Darian has Darren's I find is a lot harder because you don't really want to make him a fast armor breaker. He doesn't really serve much purpose that way. But Jubel is more of a utility unit. So I have seen people who build Jubels, like 200 speed plus, and that works because he's mostly there just to defense break and taunt, problematic units. But yeah, in any case, what speed sinking means is that you make it so that your units are as close as possible in speed, so that they move together, and hopefully the enemy doesn't have a unit around your speed range to interrupt your moves, so that you can do all your things first, make sure you can snipe something turn one, and therefore it makes the rest of the fight much easier. So you can see my Fuel Mars here has 210 speed, right? So I made my Bella slightly faster than that. Okay, so he's my Bella is at 212, and the reason I have a 2 speed difference is that so that in between my Bella and Fuel Mars, my other units, some of my other units will move. Those units include Delphoy, right? Because Delphoy here, although Delphoy here is at 212 speed as well, her base speed is slightly lower than Bella's. Right, so her base speed here is 96, right? And Bella's speed is 108, and that means Bella, even though both their speeds are equal, Bella will always move first because the Bella is benefiting more from the speed tower, which gives 15% speed bonus, right? So if you multiply 15%, to Bella's base speed and a 50% to Delphoy's base speed, Bella will be slightly ahead, and the game does count the fractions when determining the speed order, right? So that's why their speeds are like that. And the other unit that moves in between is Tisarian, right? So Tisarian here is at 211, and that's just sort of basically if my Delphoy is dead, I can use my Tisarian as well. So I don't really use this combination very often, but I did build it just in case it happens, right? So if I have, I can actually just illustrate it really quick in a random TOA. So let's put our units in. Okay, let's just start with Belfoy and Bella and Delphoy. I've mixed up their names a bit there. My apologies. Okay, so as you can see, with their speeds like the way they are, Bella moves first, Delphi moves, and obviously I felt defense break there, but that's fine. Just showing the speed combinations. And then Filmar's moves, right? They're all within one speed of each other, so it's very easy for them to get all the stuff off first, and then before the enemy can move. Same thing with Tessarion, that he'll move this like he'll move straight after Bella, right? Because his basic speed is the same as Filmar's, but he's one ahead, right? So it's 212, 211, 210. Alright, don't worry about the floor. It doesn't cost me any energy to do it. And just to debunk something, some people say the order of the way your monster position will affect who goes first if they're on the same speed, right? But it's actually only if they have the same base speed, right? So let me show you. Now, normally, based on what they say, like people say, the Delphi should move first because they have the same total speed, but she's positioned to the left. Because normally they say the person on the left will move first, but that's only the case if they have the exact same speed, including the base speed. Okay. Now I can't really illustrate the same base speed at the moment, but if you test it out, you can test that out on units on a free rune removal day. I did try it last time. I was playing around with my Tessarion and my Filmars, and I did find that if Tessarion and Filmars had the exact same speeds, then the guy on the left will move first, right? Now, where can you use Bella? You can use Bella just about everywhere, right? Apart from fodder farming, he can pretty much be used in everywhere else. You will use him as a Giants healer. Just as a quick example, like as a basic team that you can use as a free-to-play player, something like this. And obviously the fifth unit can be just about anything. I don't really have a free-to-play option in my inventory right here, but you can use something like a Water Garuda. You can use a Darien. Who else can you use? You can even use a Megan if you want. She's not really, well, she's sort of easy to obtain. She's only a 3-star, but that's just an example, right? Even Sig could be in there. And Bella can solo heal like this, as long as Bella is fairly fast. So as a new player, you'll probably be aiming for around 180 speed. It's not easy to obtain, but it is achievable with Swift runes, and maxing out your slot 2 speed rune, as long as it's at least a 5-star rune. Obviously preferably 6-star, but 5-star is still pretty good. I max a lot of 5-star speed runes because they're only 3 speed lower than 6-star versions. So as long as, like, for late game, as long as the speed subs, or sorry, the substats are good on that 5-star rune, then it's worth 6-starring. But as a beginning player, it doesn't really matter what the substats are. You know, the 5-star runes are already pretty hard to come by. I think it's worth maxing it just to make your early game life easier. It will cost a lot of mana, but I think it's worthwhile. Now, also an example, I can show like a run on dragons. You can use something like this. This is not exactly a free-to-play team or anything, but a lot of people can use very similar teams. Obviously for my team you require a Verd. Sigmaris is farmable and Veramos is farmable. Tor is not farmable, but I used to use Field Mars in place of Tor and it still worked. It was a little bit slower, but it still worked for me. Alternatively, if you're not able to run double DPS yet, you can also run like additional support, like an additional healer, additional cleanser, or Megan to buff defense and remove the immunity. There's a lot of different ways you can approach dragons, and Bella still will work in a like a beginning dragons team. And by beginning dragons team, I'm speaking basically saying Beretta as the main damage dealer to kill towers, and then Veramos for extra dots, etc. You can find more information about that in my Beretta video. I show you the free-to-play dragons team in that one, so I don't want to repeat that again, but that's just for your reference if you want to reference it. Now additionally, Bella is used in Necro for starting out, like for progression teams, because usually people won't have good enough runes to make Colleen solo heal straight away. So usually people will use Colleen and Bella together for Necro, and that's a good healer combination for that. And then the rest of your team is filled with multi-healers to break the shield. Other places you can use Bella, obviously in PvP, he's really good. I use him in arena sometimes in my safe team. But even before I even was able to make a speed a arena clear team, I used to use Bella a lot just for my normal team, right? Just to illustrate, I can show you the team that I used after this. Additionally, he's also using Guild Wars. You've probably watched a lot of my Guild Wars videos prior to this. I use Bella, Theo, Delphoid in just about every Guild Wars. It's like one of my staple comps, and I think it's very, very reliable. You can even use Tessarion instead of Delphoid as well, but it's not as good against teams that can revive, because the good thing about Delphoid's reset is that it doesn't use it completely resets the passive, whereas Tessarion doesn't actually reset the passive. He makes Fumars die, but if he gets rezzed after dying with Oblivion on him, he'll still have his passive up. So that's why usually against like Reviver plus Theo comps, I prefer Delphoid. Anyway, so this is not, well, I mean, this is not really a free-to-play team, but originally when I used to do arena manually, I would do something like this. And Chasun can really be like a lot of different units. I just use Chasun because it's an attack buff, and it's just an additional healer, so that my team's really safe, right? Other ways you can approach it is you can use, say, a reviver. It just depends what units you have. Like you can use, say, like if you're lucky enough to have a Ladriel, that can be in place there. If you have you can use Brian in there too. It's just that you'd be solely relying on Bella's heals. And that depends on how much threat the enemy team has. You can also use Bernard to speed up your team. That gives you, like, that will help Bella get more turns and cool down his heal more often. There's an additional defense breaker too, and attack break is nice as well for stifling enemy field Mars or something and things like that. Because that would be very common on ADs these days. He's also used in raids. I'm not sure if I can show. I guess I can show an example real quick. I'll just put him in my team. Okay, never mind. Raid's not working at the moment, but he is used in raid. I'm just trying to think of where to show. I think there's something wrong with the raids at the moment. People were reporting that it was not working. But as far as raiding's concerned, I'll just auto a run here. For raids, Bella is actually not a bad unit. You won't see him a lot in a lot of top players' teams because they don't really need Bella. But if you're progressing through raids, Bella is a very strong healer because of his defense break. Not a lot of teams will have a reliable defense break unless they're bringing something like a Darian. Most people will be running a Death Knight front line, and probably something like a Delphoy or maybe the Windhog. Um, and therefore, a lot of times I find that most people only have cooldown defense breaks. Like say that like Diaz has a cooldown defense break on second skill, right? But that no one really has a first skill defense break unless they're gonna make the Panda now. But even then, I think Panda's probably not gonna be that popular unless, yeah, except for progression players, people still progressing through raids. And obviously the heal is really nice in raids. Raids, um, most of the damage is AoE, or it is all AoE. It just depends on whether it's against the whole team or just the front line, and therefore Bella's heals are really strong because it's healing, everyone. So AoE heals in general are really strong. That's why Colleen is also another strong staple raid unit. And yeah, in combination with Colleen, Bella should be able to help keep your team up fairly well. You maybe like an additional healer, like a minor healer like Konamiya, and then that's a good all-rounded support core for your team. And then beyond that, you're just making sure you have the correct, like good enough frontliners and a damage dealer. Okay, and now, as I said before, for the runes, it just depends on whether you're focusing the Bella for raid, PvP, or dungeons. He's a very flexible monster. You can use a lot of different things on him. Some people will ask, would you use accuracy on slot 6? My usual answer is no, because I think it's better for Bella to have more HP, and you just grab accuracy off substats. Um, Now I think that about covers Bella quite thoroughly. So, and this video is already almost half an hour long. So I want to stop it there. If you have any questions about Bella, feel free to ask me in comments, and I'm happy to answer them as soon as I can. So thank you guys for watching. I'll do another monster guy probably in the near future. See you later. Have a good one.